In the rhythm of life, one of the greatest struggles is learning how to resist the pull of impulse. Impulse is quick, uncalculated, and often born from the fire of emotion. It makes us move too soon, speak without reflection, and act without wisdom. Patience, however, is the quiet force that tempers this fire. Patience is not weakness, nor is it passivity. It is strength restrained, energy harnessed, and vision held steady until the right moment arrives. When one begins to understand that every action has a consequence, the value of patience becomes undeniable. To cultivate patience is to recognize that the timing of life is often wiser than the timing of desire. Impulse is seductive. It promises relief, gratification, or excitement. It tells us to see something before it is ready, to answer before listening fully, to leap before we can see the ground. Yet, in following impulse, we often find ourselves entangled in regret. Words once spoken cannot be retrieved, and actions made in haste cannot be undone. A seed pulled too early from the soil cannot grow into a tree. In this way, impulse cuts off growth, while patience allows growth to unfold naturally. To choose patience over impulse is to choose depth over shallowness, endurance over collapse, clarity over chaos. Patience is not simply waiting, it is waiting with awareness. It is the art of inhabiting the present moment fully, without becoming enslaved to the hunger for the next. Patience is sitting in stillness when the mind screams for movement, breathing deeply when the heart races, and trusting that not all outcomes must be forced. It is in patience that one finds clarity, because the fog of emotional turbulence has time to clear. Through patience, vision sharpens, and what once seemed urgent reveals itself to be unimportant. What once felt impossible becomes manageable, and what once provoked anger loses its power. The discipline of patience is built in small moments. It begins when one learns to pause before responding, to breathe before reacting, to listen fully before answering. In that pause, wisdom enters. A single breath can prevent a conflict, save a relationship, or preserve one's integrity. Impulse thrives in the absence of space, but patience creates space between stimulus and response. This space is where choice lives. This space is where freedom exists. When you expand this space, you are no longer a slave to impulse, you become the master of yourself. In the practice of martial arts, patience is taught through repetition. Movements are repeated thousands of times, slowly, precisely, until they become part of the body. The student may wish to advance quickly, to move to the next form, to strike harder or faster, but the teacher reminds them progress without patience is fragile. A strong foundation is invisible at first, but without it, everything collapses. In the same way, life demands repetition, discipline, and quiet endurance. Impulse will try to rush the process, but patience secures lasting mastery. Patience over impulse is also the key to transformation. Impulse keeps one trapped in cycles of repetition, repeating the same mistakes because lessons are rushed and wisdom is ignored. Patience allows the lesson to sink deep, to penetrate not only the mind but the heart. Transformation requires time. Just as a caterpillar cannot become a butterfly in one night, one cannot transform through sudden bursts of impulse. Transformation unfolds in seasons, through slow shedding, through gradual rebirth. The one who hurries interrupts the process, but the one who waits becomes aligned with the natural rhythm of change. Impulse is the voice of fear disguised as urgency. Fear tells you that if you do not act now, the opportunity will vanish. Fear convinces you that silence means weakness and that movement means strength. But patience reveals a deeper truth. Opportunities that are meant for you will not vanish when you wait with awareness. Silence does not mean weakness, it means strength so steady that it does not need to announce itself. Stillness is not stagnation, it is the soil in which true growth takes root. To cultivate patience requires discipline, but discipline is not harshness. Discipline is a form of love directed toward oneself. It is choosing not to sabotage your own growth by surrendering to momentary desires. Impulse is easy, but it leaves one empty. Patience is difficult, but it leaves one full. Impulse satisfies for a moment, but patience fulfills for a lifetime. Through patience, the energy of desire is not suppressed, but refined. It becomes focus, perseverance, and direction. It becomes the ability to withstand challenges without breaking. It becomes the ability to see beyond the immediate and move toward the eternal. Patience teaches us that strength is not in how fast we can react, but in how long we can hold steady without losing our center. It teaches us that time is not an enemy, but an ally, that waiting is not wasted, but necessary. In patience, The storm may rage around you, but within there is calm. In patience, others may hurry, but you remain grounded. In patience, life unfolds not according to impulse, but according to wisdom. And in this unfolding, one discovers that patience is not only the antidote to impulse, but the path to mastery, to clarity, and to true transformation. Emotional stability is not about never feeling pain, nor is it about suppressing emotions until they vanish into silence. It is about finding a balance center within yourself where you can experience joy without clinging to it and endure suffering without being consumed by it. When human mind is like water, when stirred by external forces, it becomes turbulent and unclear. But when it rests, it reflects the truth without distortion. Stability does not come from eliminating the waves of life, but from learning how to remain grounded in the middle of them. When a person lacks emotional stability, every minor event can become a storm. A careless word from someone else can ignite anger, a small setback can trigger despair, and a fleeting distraction can create restlessness. In such a state, the mind is like a candle in the wind, constantly flickering and never steady enough to provide lasting light. But when stability is cultivated, emotions still arise, yet they no longer dictate the course of one's life. They appear, they pass, and the inner self remains steady, like a mountain unmoved by passing clouds. To cultivate this inner steadiness, one must begin by observing the patterns of reactivity. Every time the mind clings, resists, or overreacts, it creates an imbalance. This is why awareness is the foundation of stability. Without awareness, emotions rule unnoticed, leading to cycles of regret and impulsive behavior. With awareness, however, one begins to notice the subtle rise of irritation before it becomes anger, the faint whisper of worry before it becomes anxiety, the small craving before it becomes obsession. Observation allows distance, and within that distance lies power. Emotional stability also requires discipline. Many think stability comes from waiting for life to be calm, but life rarely cooperates with such wishes. Instead, stability is trained in the middle of chaos, in the middle of distractions, in the middle of daily struggles. Through disciplined practices, whether breath control, meditation, or physical training, the mind learns to anchor itself so that it does not drift aimlessly with every emotional current. Each time you return your attention to the present, you are strengthening your foundation. Another aspect of stability is perspective. Most emotional turbulence arises from the stories we attach to our experiences. A person does not become angry simply because of an event, they become angry because of the meaning they assign to it. A failure is not inherently devastating, it becomes so when interpreted as a reflection of personal worth. Perspective transforms how emotions are experienced. By widening the lens and seeing situations beyond immediate impulses, one reduces the intensity of emotional fluctuations. What seemed unbearable becomes manageable when seen in the vastness of time and growth. Breath is another gateway to emotional balance. The body and mind are not separate. When emotions are chaotic, the breath becomes shallow, fast, or erratic. By consciously returning to slow, deep, steady breathing, the nervous system is calmed and the storm of emotions begins to settle. This is why ancient disciplines always place such importance on the breath. It is both a mirror of inner states and a tool for transformation. To stabilize the breath is to stabilize the mind, and to stabilize the mind is to stabilize the emotions. Emotional stability is also rooted in acceptance. Much of human suffering is not caused by the emotion itself, but by the resistance to it. Fear of sadness amplifies sadness. Hatred of anger fuels more anger. Resistance creates layers, making the original feeling heavier than it truly is. But when emotions are allowed to exist without immediate judgment, they move through naturally. Acceptance does not mean indulgence. It means giving emotions the space to rise and fall without letting them define your entire state of being. Resilience grows from this practice of acceptance. Each time one experiences difficulty without collapsing, stability deepens. Each time one meets disappointment without losing inner balance, resilience strengthens. This is the gradual training of the mind to remain calm in the storm, not because storms no longer come, but because the ground beneath the feet is firm. There is also the matter of relationships. Emotional instability often spreads from one person to another, like fire catching dry grass. One unstable reaction can ignite conflict, misunderstanding, and distance. But stability has the opposite effect. A calm presence can diffuse anger, a steady voice can soothe anxiety, a balanced mind can bring clarity to confusion. Emotional stability is not only a personal strength, it becomes a service to others, a silent way of healing the turbulence of those around you. Yet, one must be cautious not to confuse emotional stability with numbness. True stability is alive, sensitive, and aware. It feels joy deeply but is not enslaved by it. It feels sorrowfully but is not destroyed by it. It is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to hold emotion without drowning in it. To numb oneself is to escape, but to stabilize oneself is to grow. Stability requires courage, for it demands that you face your emotions directly with honesty and patience. Ultimately, emotional stability is the art of mastering one's inner world. Life will always bring changes, uncertainties, and challenges. No training, no wealth, no external structure can prevent that. But stability ensures that when these changes arrive, the mind remains unshaken, the heart remains clear, and the spirit remains unbroken. It is like carrying a lamp within, one that continues to burn steadily. No matter how strong the winds may blow, there is a quiet strength in the way a person learns to draw a line. Not a line of anger, not a line of arrogance, but a line of clarity. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you from the world, nor weapons to keep others away. They are signals of self-awareness, markers of where your values rest, and reminders of how you choose to be treated. Without them, you become like a river spilling endlessly across a flat land, losing its depth, losing its direction, and ultimately losing its strength. With them, you are like the same river contained by its banks, flowing with purpose, gathering momentum, carving valleys, and nourishing everything along its path. When there are no boundaries, you often give in to demands that are not aligned with your heart. You say yes when you should say no. You bend when you should stand. You allow others to take and take until you are left wondering why your spirit feels so drained. This is not kindness, though the world may trick you into believing so. True kindness does not require self-erasure. True generosity is not born from exhaustion. To respect yourself means to know when to stop giving what you cannot afford to lose. Self-respect is not loud, nor does it need constant validation from others. It is the inner posture that keeps you steady when temptations of compromise arise. It is the quiet whisper that reminds you, you are worthy of peace. You are worthy of honesty. You are worthy of love that does not diminish you. Without this respect for yourself, you begin to negotiate your dignity for acceptance, your truth for comfort, your boundaries for temporary approval. Every time this happens, you chip away at the foundation that keeps you whole. Boundaries are not a punishment to others. They are an act of responsibility to yourself. They are the recognition that your time, your energy, and your emotional landscape are sacred. The one who has no boundaries will often find themselves burdened by resentment, not because others are inherently cruel, but because you have not taught them where the threshold lies. People cannot know the invisible borders of your soul unless you show them. They cannot honor what you refuse to articulate. When you stay silent, you silently agree to the erosion of your own well-being. It is important to understand that boundaries do not mean isolation. They do not mean withdrawing from relationships or cutting off connections as a way of defense. They mean showing up with integrity and clarity. They mean saying yes when it aligns with your truth and saying no when it does not. They mean allowing others to be responsible for their emotions while you remain responsible for your own. They mean you do not need to explain or over-justify your needs, for your needs are valid by their very existence. There is also a discipline in maintaining boundaries, for it is easy to declare them once, but it takes consistency to live by them. When the pressure of expectations rises, when guilt is placed upon you, when others attempt to push beyond your limits, that is the moment when your respect for yourself is tested. Do you hold steady? Do you remember why you placed that boundary in the first place? Do you allow guilt to bend you, or do you stand with grace and firmness? Discipline in this sense is not harshness, but a gentle loyalty to your own worth. Boundaries and self-respect also create the foundation for deeper relationships. Without them, interactions become clouded with unspoken resentments, hidden frustrations, and unmet needs. With them, clarity is brought forth. Others know where you stand. They know what you will accept and what you will not. This clarity allows trust to grow, for respect is mutual. When you respect yourself enough to draw the line, you invite others to meet you at that line with honesty. You invite authenticity, not manipulation. You invite reciprocity, not exploitation. There is a strength that arises when you no longer need to please everyone. You begin to realize that being accepted by all is not the goal. Being true to yourself is the goal. The world may not always like your boundaries, but that is not the measure of their worth. The measure lies in the peace you feel when you honor them. It lies in the freedom that comes when you are no longer enslaved to the approval of others. It lies in the quiet joy of knowing that you have not betrayed yourself in order to belong. Self-respect requires you to see yourself as deserving of care, even when no one else is watching. It asks you to protect your energy as you would protect a flame from the wind. It asks you to speak truth even when silence would be easier. It asks you to choose dignity even when compromise promises comfort. Respect for self is not selfishness. It is the foundation upon which all true compassion rests. For how can you truly honor another if you cannot first honor yourself? How can you recognize the sacred in others if you constantly deny the sacred within you? Boundaries then become the outward expression of that inward respect. They are the way your inner values take shape in the world. They are not rigid cages, but flexible frameworks that allow you to live in harmony with yourself. They are not fixed forever, but living markers that grow as you grow. And when you live with both, you begin to notice a shift. You no longer chase validation, you no longer fear rejection, and you no longer measure your worth by how much you can endure. You begin to walk with a quiet dignity, a steady presence, a calm that no one can easily shake. There exists within human relationships a delicate balance, a polarity that shapes not only the way we connect with others, but also the way we connect with ourselves. On one side stands independence, the ability to stand tall, to breathe freely, to walk the path of life without relying on another to hold us upright. On the other side lingers neediness, the craving for constant validation, the yearning for someone else to fill the emptiness we do not wish to face within. Between these two extremes lies the truth of human growth, the path that defines whether we thrive or remain dependent upon forces outside of us. Independence is not isolation, nor is it indifference. Independence is the recognition that the foundation of one's life cannot be built upon someone else's approval, attention, or presence. It is the understanding that freedom begins when we can look within and say, I am enough. An independent person does not close their heart to love, nor do they turn away from companionship. Rather, their love flows from fullness instead of lack, and their companionship grows from choice instead of desperation. Neediness, however, is a silent weight. It disguises itself as affection, but in truth, it is a cry for survival. It is the mind whispering, I cannot face myself, so I must cling to you. It turns relationships into cages where one holds the other prisoner through fear of abandonment. Neediness is never satisfied because it seeks outside what can only be discovered within. Like drinking salt water to quench thirst, it only deepens the longing, never resolves it. To be independent is to embrace responsibility for one's own emotions. No one else can carry the burden of our happiness, for even if they try, their strength will eventually falter under the weight. When one demands that another fill the void inside, resentment eventually arises. The giver feels drained, and the receiver remains unsatisfied. True independence breaks this cycle because it demands that we turn inward, face the silence, and meet ourselves without escape. But independence is not coldness nor arrogance. It is not the rejection of others nor the denial of intimacy. A strong tree, rooted deeply, does not resist the sun's light nor the rain's nourishment. It welcomes both, but it does not collapse if one is absent. Likewise, the independent spirit welcomes love, friendship, and companionship, but it does not crumble when these shift or fade. It remains grounded in its own soil. Neediness, on the other hand, builds its foundation upon shifting sands. It demands reassurance in every moment, seeks constant proof, and fears the silence between words. When one lives in neediness, the world feels unstable, because one's center is not within but scattered across the presence of others. The fear of being left becomes the shadow that drives every action, and in this fear, freedom is lost. When a relationship is built on independence, it becomes a meeting of two whole beings, not two halves seeking to complete each other. Each person stands strong on their own, and together they amplify rather than repair one another's lives. But when a relationship is built on neediness, it becomes a meeting of two voids, hoping the other will fill what cannot be filled from outside. Such a bond drains both, leaving only exhaustion. Independence demands courage, for it requires standing face to face with solitude. It asks us to sit in silence and listen to the voices inside that we often drown out with noise, distraction, or attachment. It asks us to accept that we are the sole architects of our inner world. Neediness, by contrast, is easier in the short term. It allows one to escape the silence by leaning on another. But like a weak branch leaning on a stronger one, the dependence eventually breaks both under strain. The practice of independence is the practice of self-sufficiency of the spirit. It does not mean one never asks for help, nor does it mean one rejects support. Instead, it means that help is requested from a place of strength rather than desperation. Support is welcomed but not demanded. Companionship is chosen, not clung to. Love is given, not begged for. In such a state, every connection becomes richer, freer, and more authentic, because it is not born from fear. To transform neediness into independence is not to abandon others, but to reclaim the self. It begins by noticing where in life we grasp too tightly, where we fear being left behind, where our peace depends on the approval or presence of someone else. It begins with releasing those patterns, with choosing to nourish the inner soil so that the roots grow strong. It is in small acts choosing solitude without fear, creating joy without waiting for someone else to provide it, practicing silence until it no longer feels like emptiness but like fullness. Independence is the quiet strength that radiates from within. It is the ability to walk alongside others with open hands rather than clenched fists. It is the freedom to love without fear of loss, to give without expecting return, to exist without constant reassurance. Neediness binds, independence liberates. Neediness contracts, independence expands. Neediness drains, independence empowers. The journey between these two is the journey of transformation. It is the shift from fear to trust, from emptiness to wholeness, from dependence to freedom. Only when one has tasted the power of standing alone can one truly appreciate the beauty of standing together, because only then is togetherness a choice, not a necessity. When we speak of greatness, when we speak of strength, when we speak of those individuals who have shaped the world in silent but powerful ways, one quality appears again and again: consistency of character. It is not the brilliance of one moment, nor the triumph of a single act that defines a life. It is the steady presence, the alignment between inner values and outer actions, repeated over and over, that forms the foundation of trust, respect, and true influence. Consistency of character is the slow, enduring fire that refines a human being into someone who cannot be shaken by storms, cannot be bent by temporary gains, and cannot be lost in the noise of the world. Many people believe that success comes from talent, intelligence, or even luck. But talent without discipline, intelligence without stability, and luck without responsibility quickly collapse. The foundation that allows any of these gifts to flourish is character that does not waver. To act in harmony with your principles even when no one is watching, to hold integrity not as a mask, but as your very nature, to repeat the same truth in moments of struggle and in moments of ease. This is consistency of character. It is not dramatic, it does not seek attention, but it speaks louder than any words. The reason consistency matters is because life tests us in patterns, not in isolated moments. The same challenges appear in different forms, the same temptations return disguised, the same opportunities knock again when we least expect them. If the character is inconsistent, if the self shifts like a leaf in the wind, then every test will bring confusion and weakness. But if there is a steady root, if the values are firmly grounded, then no matter how many times the test returns, the response will remain aligned with who we are. And through this alignment, power grows. Consistency of character is also what allows trust to exist. Relationships, whether with family, friends, or communities, are built not on occasional greatness, but on dependable presence. People remember not the one act of kindness, but the continued reliability of kindness. They remember not the one moment of courage, but the repeated courage that shows itself again and again. Trust is not given to those who shine once, but to those who show up with the same integrity every day. And without trust, no bond, no leadership, no legacy can truly last. But maintaining consistency is not simple, because the world pulls us in many directions. Temptation whispers of shortcuts, fear encourages retreat, ego seeks recognition, and doubt questions our path. The challenge is not only to know what we value, but to live it again and again, even when it is inconvenient, even when no reward is visible, even when it costs us comfort. This is why character is tested in silence more than in noise, in ordinary days more than in extraordinary ones. It is the small decisions, repeated endlessly, that build the invisible strength which one day reveals itself when a great storm arrives. When a person's words and actions do not match, the energy becomes divided. The mind loses clarity, the body loses balance, and the spirit loses peace. But when character remains consistent, alignment forms. The outer and the inner become one. This creates an unshakable calm, a presence that others can feel without explanation. It is why some individuals inspire without trying, why their influence extends beyond what they say, because people sense the stability, the unwavering ground beneath their feet. Consistency of character is not rigidity. It is not an unwillingness to grow or adapt. Growth is necessary. Change is inevitable. But growth that is rooted in consistent values becomes strength, while growth without roots becomes chaos. To adjust strategies, to learn new skills, to expand perspective, these are signs of wisdom. But to betray one's core principles, to compromise integrity for gain, to bend truth for convenience, this is where inconsistency destroys. The art is to remain firm in values while flexible in methods, steady in principles while open in practice. This consistency is also what sustains discipline. Motivation rises and falls like waves, but discipline remains steady when anchored in character. To rise each day and practice, to commit to the work even without applause, to hold yourself accountable even when others are not watching, requires more than fleeting inspiration. It requires a consistency that comes from deeply knowing who you are and what you stand for. Without it, effort becomes scattered. With it, effort becomes cumulative, and small actions compound into extraordinary transformation. The world often admires sudden achievements, overnight success, and moments of brilliance. But true mastery, true impact, is built over time through steady repetition of aligned action. It is built by those who are the same person in private and in public, in victory and defeat, in the beginning and in the end. Consistency of character is not glamorous, but it is the quiet force that outlasts all noise. It is the foundation upon which respect is earned, legacies are written, and lives are transformed. Pressure is an inevitable force of life. It does not ask permission, it does not wait for convenience, and it does not bend itself to personal preference. Pressure arrives in many forms: expectations, challenges, hardships, responsibilities, and even in the quiet moments of self-doubt that weigh upon the mind. Most people encounter pressure and immediately perceive it as a burden, something heavy and oppressive. Yet, within the very nature of pressure lies a hidden potential. Pressure is not only a test, it is also an invitation to grow, to refine, and to reveal strength that otherwise remains concealed. Grace under pressure is not the absence of struggle, but the mastery of presence when struggle arises. Grace does not mean weakness, nor does it mean denial of reality. Grace is a state of inner composure, a steadiness that remains unshaken by external turbulence. It is the ability to stand firm when the winds of life push in every direction. Many imagine strength as something loud, something forceful, something that shows itself through resistance. But true strength often expresses itself in silence, in calmness, in measured responses that cannot be provoked by chaos. To carry grace under pressure is to embody resilience without hardening the heart, to remain clear without becoming cold, to maintain dignity without relying on pride. Pressure is transformative. In nature, coal is pressed into diamond, metal is forged by fire, seeds push against soil to emerge into the light. Without pressure, potential remains dormant, and beauty never reveals itself. In human life, pressure reveals what lies within the individual. When everything is easy, it is simple to be kind, patient, and composed. But when difficulty arises, when life applies weight upon the spirit, the hidden nature of the mind and heart is revealed. Grace under pressure shows itself not in easy moments, but in the most demanding ones. It becomes clear whether one collapses, resists with bitterness, or transforms the weight into growth. The cultivation of grace requires awareness. Pressure magnifies the patterns of the mind. A restless mind under pressure becomes more restless. An angry mind under pressure becomes more volatile. A fearful mind under pressure becomes paralyzed. But the aware mind under pressure observes these tendencies without being consumed by them. Awareness provides a gap between reaction and response. It allows the individual to choose a higher path instead of being dragged down by instinctive impulses. With awareness, pressure ceases to be an enemy and becomes a mirror reflecting what must be worked on internally. Grace is also deeply connected to breathing and posture. When pressure tightens the body, the shoulders rise, the breath shortens, the muscles contract. The body mirrors the inner state, and the inner state amplifies the body's tension in return. To find grace under pressure requires releasing this cycle. Slow breathing steadies the nervous system, expands the chest, and relaxes the body. Posture shapes the mind. A bowed posture under pressure communicates defeat to the spirit, while an upright but relaxed posture signals strength and balance. Grace is carried not only in the mind but also in the way the body presents itself to the world. Pressure can also be reframed. Many suffer under pressure because they view it only as a threat. But pressure can also be seen as a teacher. The weight one feels is the same force that shapes character. Just as resistance in physical training strengthens the muscles, resistance in life strengthens the mind and heart. Grace under pressure does not deny difficulty, but accepts it as part of the process. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the perspective shifts toward, "What is this teaching me?" Such a shift changes the relationship with hardship and opens the door for inner transformation. In addition, grace under pressure is not about isolation from others. It is also about how one interacts with the world while carrying burdens. Many, when under stress, project their frustrations onto those around them, creating conflict and spreading negativity. Grace is the opposite. It is the capacity to hold pressure without transmitting it destructively. A graceful individual does not pass the weight onto others, but instead becomes a stabilizing presence. This does not mean denying one's struggles. It means transforming personal challenges into a strength that uplifts rather than harms. Grace under pressure is cultivated through discipline. Just as a martial artist trains under intensity to remain composed, or a monk trains the mind to stay present under distraction, one must practice calmness daily. Small pressures can be opportunities to rehearse. Standing in line, waiting in traffic, dealing with minor setbacks, all these become training grounds. If one cannot maintain grace in small moments, how can it be expected in greater storms? Each encounter with discomfort is a chance to strengthen the inner foundation so that when true weight arrives, it is met with steadiness rather than collapse. Pressure also humbles. It reminds individuals that life cannot always be controlled. Despite planning, effort, and preparation, circumstances may unfold unpredictably. Grace under pressure does not resist this truth. It acknowledges that control is limited and that the essence of power lies not in forcing life into a shape, but in adapting with dignity. Humility allows one to release the illusion of total control and instead focus on what can be mastered: attitude, presence, and response. This humility, combined with inner strength, forms the core of grace. The world respects those who remain calm when others panic, who remain composed when others lose balance, who carry themselves with dignity when others collapse under the same weight. Grace under pressure becomes an unspoken strength, visible not in words but in the way one moves through difficulty. It is a quiet radiance that inspires others, a reminder that storms can be endured with dignity, that challenges can be met with composure, and that pressure can refine rather than destroy.